And here we are. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And this is, in fact, I believe the third, hopefully I can get that right, the third featured reading in the One Art Reading series. I'm pleased to host an exceptional lineup of poets today, poets who, if you were not already aware, are also editors. I learned early in my introduction to the literary community that over time, editors tend to become more known for their work as an editor, excuse me, and less so for their work as an artist. It's long felt important to me to provide spaces for those who wear both of these hats to have an opportunity to share their personal artistic endeavors. I'm just going to put a couple links in the chat about One Art. I know many have already donated, but just adding that in there, and then links about our readings and our workshop series. There's in fact a workshop coming up on Wednesday with Grant Clauser. So thank you again for being here. Our first featured poet is Heidi Seaborn. I had the pleasure of meeting Heidi in person for the first time in AWP when the conference came to Philadelphia. Heidi is executive editor of the Adroit Journal and winner of the Missouri Review Jeffrey E. Smith Editor's Prize in Poetry. She's author of 3 award-winning books / chapbooks of poetry: An Insomniac Slumber Party with Marilyn Monroe, Give a Girl Chaos, and Bite Marks. Recent work has appeared in Agni, Blackbird, Copper Nickel, Financial Times of London, Poetry Northwest, Plume, The Slowdown, and of course One Art. Heidi has degrees from Stanford and NYU. Also, I'll mention that Heidi was listed in One Art's top 25 most read One Art publications of 2021. And I'll drop a couple links in the chat where you can learn more about Heidi. Heidi, thank you for being here, and take it away.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Mark, Louisa. Thank you, One Art. You are not just a wonderful publication, but such incredible literary citizens and do so much for the literary community. It's really an amazing act for all of us to follow as editors. So I realize I have been published quite a few times by One Art, and I feel very blessed. And so I went through the poems that have been published, and I'm going to read a selection of those, and then all of you can dig in. And I want to also thank the audience for showing up. And it's fun to see a few friends in the audience. Okay, the first poem is called Pleiades, and it's for my sisters. Middle-aged, hot bee-type stars. Not a billing, really, more a snarky aside, whispered too loudly by a passing cluster, clutching cocktails at a high school reunion. We of beautiful bones, bright eyes, obvious to the naked eye in a night sky, sisters. Even now in wintertime, a distant freeze us in the past. We were a town of sisters then, an abundance, a mess of beauty. Our bodies the stuff of stars, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, atoms aligned. We left an atmosphere behind. That's what lingers, the blue heat, luminous, the stories spilling over, and how we sail through it all. I grew up in a town near where I live now, and for some reason, there were only sisters. They were just families with, 4 sisters, 5 sisters. There's just an amazing amount of sisters. So, and my sisters and I were lucky to be part of that. This next poem is for another woman in my life, which is my daughter. And years ago, we lived in Spain, and we took a family trip to Morocco, and she got a little sick. But this is about raising my daughter. Years ago in Morocco, we'll always have Casablanca, I thought, on the train from Marrakesh, even as my girl became a pocket turned out, emptying the trinkets from the bazaar, the snake charmer in the plaza with the couscous and zalouk, her fever blazing, so that we missed the argan trees, the feast of goats in their branches, the surprise of hoof and horn amongst leaves. We're tree climbers, my burning girl and me, the desire to disappear up into apple or avocado, to see distance, seek the danger of gravity and air. How often I look for myself in my daughter, tangle of hair and lit green eyes, as she struggles to climb higher, the limbs thinning beyond me. Only the goat can clamber up into the thorny argan, its branches barely bending as a dozen goats perch in each tree. When a daughter cleaves from her mother, the roots remain, like the argan roots, sleeping deep beneath Moroccan heat. I wait years in the tree's minimal shade for my daughter to shimmy back down. Standing eye to eye, I wonder if I know her, this remarkable goat. As if we had both burned in the flame of her fever, in that hotel bed we shared in Casablanca, to return years later, blooming anew, like an orchard after fire. And do look up the argan trees with the goats in them. It's really kind of crazy. While I'm on the subject of animals, I'm going to read this little poem. Yeah. It's called The Spider Has Her Say. Start with this premise: we are all animals, and some animals are gods. Consider the placement of the eyes or how far they've traveled, the condition of their hooves, paws. In some, the wind bellows, hunger sparks like lightning, how feral their weather. Others feather the day with song. You hear what you want to know. A few furless animals stand like aspen trees in winter, eyes fixed on a frozen earth, seeing nothing. Soon I will retire to my knitting. There's much to repair. Yeah, there is much to repair in this world. But I'm continuing to stay optimistic, and this next poem is about that. It's called I've Been Thinking About Love, and the title runs right into the poem. I've been thinking about love as I read the news gunning its engine, as it muscles over the streets at night, as my neighbor tends the rare rose of 4% remission hope, as her wife touches the belly of her cancer and considers death, as the soft sand of land beneath our home slowly erodes. Yes, I've been thinking how love arrives like a bird, then becomes a burden, difficult to hold, impossible to let go. Yet, as the world howls, it is the bird I hear. Yeah. And speaking of howling, this next poem is called Like Wolves. And the interesting thing about wolves is not only do they howl, but they also mate for life. And this poem is followed by the title is followed by an epigraph, which is the plural pronoun is a dangerous fiction, which is a line from Ellen Bryant Voigt, the wonderful poet. And so I love the tension of being forced to mate for life, and yet, like wolves, we navigate new terrain, you and I, beseech wind and sun for energy, anything to sustain as we walk further than either of us ever imagined, carrying the carcass of weather on our backs. Oh, love, remember when we would gnaw each other with flamboyant hunger? Last night, I heard the wind chime in the smoke tree and thought of the ease of leaving. By morning, I'd forgotten. And I'll end with a poem to my mother, who happens to be here. Thanks for showing up always, Mom. And it's titled, On the September Day I Helped My Mother Move into Senior Living. Am I too quick? The days already foreshortened. A glass of rosé passé. We unwrap each plate, goblet, tureen, a final shelving, yet a vase of dahlias. Last night, light traces the rooms we sift through like memories. The gleaming silver tea set, heirloom doomed for crucible and torch. I lift a file box marked important for when I die, you say. I place it beyond reach. Then fold the linens, make the bed, carry the empty boxes out into the tarnished evening, returning to the shimmer of you. Thank you so very much.
Wow, thank you, Heidi. That was a wonderful reading. I love the Goat Tree poem so much. I definitely think about it often. Um, and in several ways, you reminded me, partly the mom mentioned that I neglected to mention at the beginning of this, that unfortunately Abby E. Murray is not with us. They were going to be reading, but had a family emergency to take care of. So sadly, that's not happening. But I believe Louisa is going to do us the pleasure of reading one of Abby's poems at the end of the reading as part of our closing out. Um, so thank you again, Heidi. And let me introduce our next reader. So Marjorie Maddox, who I've been familiar with for quite some time, which I'll get to. Marjorie is professor of English at the Lock Haven campus of Commonwealth University and has published 16 collections of poetry, including Transplant, Transport, Transubstantiation, Begin with a Question, and a Shanti Arts ekphrastic collaboration, Art Speaks is Spoken For, along with photographer Karen Elias. In the Museum of My Daughter's Mind was a collaboration with her daughter, who is an artist, Anna Lee Hafer. And How Can I Look Up When I Don't Know How It's Spelled? Spelling Mimetics, or Mnemonics rather, and Grammar Tricks, which came out from Kelsay. Seeing Things from Wild House is forthcoming in 2024. In addition, she's published a story collection, What She Was Saying, and 4 children's and YA books. Also, along with Jerry Wemple, Marjorie is co-editor of Commonwealth, Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania, which is how I first became familiar with Marjorie and her work. And forthcoming, Keystone Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania from PSU Press. Marjorie is also the assistant editor of Presence and co-hosts Poetry Moment on WPSU. So I will drop some links in the chat. Further, I just want to mention Marjorie was among One Art's top 10 most read poets of both February 2023 and April 2024. And I would like, if she's up for it, for Marjorie to talk a little bit about the Commonwealth series, which is really astounding, and it just makes me think about all sorts of important things and things I shouldn't really be surprised about, such as there being like really impressive pockets of poetry and poetry communities around the country. We are very lucky to have an embarrassment of riches locally in the general Philadelphia area. but I'm learning that all over the country there are these really lovely pockets, and we can talk about that. But off to Marjorie now.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for everything you do with One Art. Heidi, just lovely poems, and I'm looking forward to hearing Erin and Hayley. Maybe I'll answer the question first, and then I'll dive into the reading. Yeah, it's been a joy to edit these two collections. The second one, Keystone Poetry, is a 20th anniversary edition of the first one. So we're bringing it out. It's been 5 years in the process, but that's what we expected from the beginning. And a number of people on the Zoom are in that collection. So we're excited about that as well. And kind of an offshoot of that, I took over from Todd Davis and Shara McCallum to do the poetry moment on WPSU FM. So a number of people from the anthology on that, but I'm also trying to spread the wealth. And there's, as Mark said, there's so many amazing poets in Pennsylvania that I'm trying to showcase as many of them as possible. So I'm doing it for a second year. I guess they didn't kick me out, so I am continuing on and enjoying it. And why I have the screen background is I have my little radio station set up in my office here with foam from the attic for insulation or for sound. So that's why you get the beautiful picture instead of the foam in from my attic. So I'm going to read a number of poems from One Art and then a few others that kind of connect with those poems. So and some of these poems are from forthcoming books. So this is a poem that came out in One Art, and Mark was very gracious, and I sent it to him. It's called Fly a Kite Day, and he fit it in almost immediately in connection to June 15th, 2022. And it's also the first poem in my book, Hover Here, which will be coming out from Broadstone Books in late 2025. Fly a Kite Day. In the wind is the curl of her grandma's gray, is the twirl of her mother's spin, is the sway of the willows green, while, no longer tethered, the girl swings into a sky papered with kites. See how the bright diamonds, both flimsy and strong, dip into dreams she shares with them, women she knew only as passing breeze. Still, she rises on her breath, rises on their breath, hovers on their stories. It is the same air, and she is not the hand or the string, but with them a kaleidoscope of kites, high in the sky and soaring. And this is an older poem that I kind of forgot about a little bit, and so I was very excited that Mark took this for One Art. My father died in 1993, and my mother remarried a few years earlier when she was 65. So this is a poem about that. My mother gets a can opener and roses for her birthday. The man she loves surprises her by not giving what she needs around her finger. On her birthday, the metal ring from the green bean can clangs on the counter. She laughs nervously, runs her finger along the long stems of new roses, arranged traditionally in the vase my dead father gave her, though she would never take his flowers, expensively bought. And this love, spontaneous in its practicality, practical in its spontaneity, she wears proudly, everywhere, polished, shiny as the kitchen her cans still were in, while the two cook hungrily together. And this next poem is from my forthcoming book, Seeing Things, which is coming out from Wild House. A book that was probably the most difficult one for me to write. It deals with family members' depression, early stages of my mother's dementia, and a lot of it is also about the very blurry line, even blurrier today than used to be, but blurry line between truth and lie that we see in society. and how lies have become so commonplace. But this particular poem is about dementia, a sonnet. Dusk. The way the clouds hang low, it could be noon or late fall. She doesn't know the season or the time. In her mind, the days make room for meals, for bathroom trips. No reasons to remember where, why. She knows someone will arrive to take her there, will prepare the necessary plans, will know the when of her leaving, the coat she'll need to wear to brace herself from cold. Perhaps it's snow that filters out the light. Perhaps it's dusk, the long chill drawing close. And yet she hopes it's spring, late day, the world's worries hushed as she slips now towards sleep. Always the gray darkens to night. She does not know the day. And this is another poem that came out in One Art and is also in Seeing Things, which will be out at the end of February. Nursery rhyme. Quiet, says the word that slips from sealed lips, and wait, warns the wound, still bruising at the hip. Not now, think the arms when tightened in his grip. Shh, shh, mouths the wife as she protects the crib. Run, urge the others when his words become whip. Don't look, cry the eyes. He orders her to strip. Go now, prompts the rhymes that counts the times she trips. Quiet, says the word that slips from sealed lips. Too late, mouth the dead that can't protect the crib. And this one is a companion piece to a poem that was in One Art. And that poem was Karaoke at the Artist Residency. So this one stems from an experience I had at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, where I was sitting at dinner at, you get to sit at dinner with all the other residents, which is a great experience. Sitting at dinner with an artist, and it was very clear that she only was interested in talking to me if she thought I was well known, which I wasn't. So here's this poem. The artist at the Colony asked me if I'm famous. If I'm someone she should know, pay attention to, bother having coffee with, talk with about the father who raped her at 12, about my father, about the slant of rainy light after you're weeping for half a life and then some, and when, if you leave the toilet paper unwinding from the top or bottom, and what our papa said the 2 days after, and avocados and kumquats, and the strange geometric shapes that cascade into our dreams 5 days each year before the equinox. And if I'm well known enough for her to pry open my palm and slice my lifelines with an X-Acto knife, would I do that for her? And have I won a Pulitzer yet? And what color were the eyes of God when I looked straight at him for 3 minutes without blinking once? Okay, maybe once. And may she have that last bottle of wine? Could she borrow a glass? And how much does the New Yorker pay? Do I think they would consider her work? She started writing too. Have I slept with anyone there? And does the mold in my studio make my eyes itch in the morning or evening? She's heard both because she really wants to know about the time that London editor who knew the New York editor who knew me from someone at the Colony or raved about my work on Eskimos or transplants or something like that, and later sat on a committee that judged that really important prize. She can't remember which one right now because, thanks again, she had a bit too much of my Merlot. But am I that writer, the one she's heard something about, the one she should know? No, I say, no, though I am someone writing, trying to write, someone. And this is a poem that's in Seeing Things, that's coming out in February. And on one level, it's about the Thailand cave rescue, which many of you may remember from 2018, where the young boys on the soccer team were stranded in the cave and were rescued. And in other ways, it's about parenting and that fear that most parents or all parents have when their child is in danger. Arise. This is the prayer of all parents in whispers, in screams, in the near silent gasp sinking to groan outside the dark cave of the dead and the maybe gone. Who can tell what the gruesome air is chewing? The unknown hovering its blind hope too high, too high. This is your language, this mine lament, swirling the undercurrent of belly, twisting the tunnel's neck into blind holes, dead ends, while the now maimed but still living parents beg, arise, come forth. Come forth, the doctor priest, I don't know, commands my child, who has barricaded herself behind boulders of her own making, too large, too large, she cries when the divers...
Language that came to me during those really painful spring days. And so I just went ahead.
Thanks. Too large, she cries when the divers swim under, around, instruct her to breathe more deeply the length of her labyrinth that turns now into stones not thrown, but shouldered by the belief of swimmers, by the petitions of ancients, by the precise calculations of strangers, marking the thin space between supplications, rising daily in a common language of grief or relief, swallowed again and again in the narrow cavern of waiting, someone else's words bobbing steadily in the dark night of the cold, the faithful ritual of rescue, ready to begin again for this child and this one, and even mine, miles below belief and barely breathing. And I'll end with two very short poems. This one is coming out in a couple of weeks from my book, Small Earthly Space, which is another collaboration with photographer Karen Elias from Shanti Arts. Early morning adoration. Pale sky too shy to praise itself. Trees are the first to name glory, tangled in their tresses. What can the breeze proclaim but yes, when boughs that could bow down to dying instead raise bare twigs in winter adoration? And it's a beautiful photo just of bare boughs and twigs. And the last one is was in One Art. So thank you for that, Mark. And also will be in Hover here. Praise poem for the ordinary. For the pebble, the worm, the clothesline, the warm bread, the simple turn of head that says, I heard you. The bird that lets go on its own. The bluebird that returns to perch where the dogwood's blossoms glow. The dim light outside, the bright light within, the low hum of hope when the unseen grows deep in the hole you've dug in dry dirt on an ordinary afternoon, just this side of Eden's repeated hallelujahs. So thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, thank you, Marjorie. That was a powerful reading. Greatly appreciated. Our next reader is Erin Murphy. Erin Murphy's latest book of poems, Human Resources, is forthcoming from Salmon Poetry. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in journals including Southern Poetry Review, Ecotone, the Georgia Review, Waxwing, Guest House, Women's Studies Quarterly, and elsewhere. Her awards include the Normal School Poetry Prize, the Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Prize, and a Best of the Net Award. Erin is editor of 3 anthologies, all from University of Nebraska and SUNY Press, and serves as poetry editor of the Somerset Review, which is a wonderful journal. She's professor of English at Penn State Altoona, and I'll drop a link to Erin's website in the chat. Also, I want to note that Erin conducted a workshop for One Art based on her notable creation of the demi-sonnet, and there is, in fact, a Wikipedia page dedicated to the demi-sonnet. So over to Erin.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks to you and Louisa for all the work you do with One Art. It's not only a brilliant concept, but you all are just lightning fast with your response times. I think we all are familiar with certain journals that sit on your work for sometimes multiple years. Like I have friends who post like, here's the 3-year anniversary date of my work at X journal, still in progress. And with One Art, it's not unusual to hear within a day. So thank you for all of the work that you do with the journal and with this reading series and with your workshops. I am going to read some poems from my brand new book, Fluent in Blue, that came out in, let me see if I can get this right, came out in April. And then I'll read some other poems too, including some demi-sonnets that Mark mentioned. I'm going to start with a poem from Fluent in Blue that's based on, you may remember, the I-95 collapse that happened in June of 2023 in Philadelphia. And when that happened, I was struck by the fact that I realized that more than half of my life I had lived within a mile or two of I-95. And it made me realize how many formative experiences I had that connected to the highway. When I published the poem, I ended up hearing from people all over the country, and it turns out a lot of people feel like they have a connection to I-95. And I'm guessing that even if you haven't lived on the I-95 corridor, you probably have a road that you do have some kind of connections to. Might even be just like a small little route number near your home where you've traveled a lot. So I'm hoping that even if you don't have the 95 connection, that the poem will resonate for you. I-95 corridor. 1. This is where I was cited for reckless driving, and my uncle quipped, 95 is the route number, not the speed limit. 2. This is where I stopped with an ex-boyfriend on the last stretch from Miami, and a motel clerk asked if we wanted the all-night or hourly rate. 3. This is where my grad school U-Haul broke down and I waited for the wrecker with a Swiss Army knife flexed against my bare thigh. 4. This is where I learned all the lyrics to Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues, rewinding the cassette till it snapped in the deck. 5. This is where I interviewed for an adjunct teaching gig that would cost me more in tolls and gas than I'd earn. 6. This is where thieves took my Plymouth Breeze on a joyride, then dumped it on the shoulder, my just cashed paycheck still in the console. 7. This is where my husband missed an exit for the symphony and grazed a concrete pillar beneath an underpass. 8. This is where I ordered my daughter vanilla ice cream with extra maraschino cherries after she lay corpse still for her first echocardiogram. 9. This is where a tanker truck caught fire, melting the highway's steel beams until an entire span collapsed like a ruptured aorta. 10. Corridor. A long, narrow passage between rooms or land or time. 11. They are still sifting through the truck driver's remains. 12. I can never remember if it's steel oneself, EE, or steal oneself, EA. Am I supposed to harden my feelings or shove them under my shirt like a shoplifter? 13. In the show I'm watching, one corridor leads to another, rough cut after rough cut of white walls in a workplace maze. 14. The day of the symphony, we abandoned our SUV on the off-ramp and ran 4 blocks to the concert hall, plunking into plush seats just in time for da-da-da-dum. 15. Commute, hospital, concert, wedding, commute, bar mitzvah, commute, funeral, commute. 16. Lately, I need to sit closer to the throat of a bass trombone or purring cat to feel a stirring in my pulse. 17. My uncle is gone now. A stroke, 2 days before Christmas. 18. For years, I replayed that last conversation in my ex's red Jetta, his hands trying to bend the steering wheel, his eyes swollen. 19. What's the difference between carefree and careless? 20. I'm not sure. I want to know. 21. So many bodies and bodies in motion. 22. I can't steal myself. I'm already stolen. So, my husband and I have been together 35 years, and I realized I'd only written him one love poem, and it mentions colonoscopies. So I'm not sure I get full credit for that as a love poem, but it has gotten me out of writing a lot of occasional poems. When people say, "Oh, can you write a poem for my wedding or for my lover for Valentine's Day?" And I say, "I write love poems," they mention colonoscopies. They're like, "Never mind, I'm good. I don't need your poem." So, but for Fluent in Blue, for my new book, I actually have a poem that's a legit love poem. It's called That First Summer. Most weekends, we packed our blue canoe with a tent, sleeping bags, books, a cooler, and enough food and wine for the weekend, then paddled out to a sandbar in the middle of the river. For 2 days, we swam and read and drank and fucked, stretching out in the sun, lean and dark. Later, we learned that some nights, engineers release waters from the dam upstream to control the floodplain. Experienced boaters knew to check the schedule. What did we know? Nothing about harnessing nature. Everything about being swept away. So Mark mentioned my demi-sonnets, which I was doing the math, and I think they're like turning 15 years old. Um, so I thought I'd share them. So they're 7 lines, half a sonnet, right? They end with a full or a slant rhyme. Sometimes that rhyme is sort of hidden within the poem. I did a workshop for One Art on demi-sonnets, and he actually wrote a really great recap of that workshop. So you might be able to put that into the chat, Mark, if you can find it. But he does a really good job of describing not only the workshop, but the form itself. And I think has maybe some links to examples, including some that had been published in One Art. So I'll read a couple from Taxonomies, which is my most recent collection of demi-sonnets. This came out in 2022. This one is called Taxonomy of Cell Phones. In 1990 BC, before cells, I chatted with a stranger in a laundromat. We've been friends ever since. Now a communication device keeps people from talking to each other. Our faces half aglow in a screen eclipse. We cradle phones like baby birds who've slipped from the nest, feed them from our fingertips. This next demi-sonnet from that collection is called Taxonomy of Google Autocomplete. So if you're familiar with Google Autocomplete, like maybe you start to type a question, where I live today, people might type like, "What time is?" and it would autocomplete the Steelers game, right? So where Mark and Louisa are, of course, it would be the Eagles or the Eagles, as you all pronounce it. So this is called Taxonomy of Google Autocomplete, and it's based on the question of what's the difference. And I have a series of these in the book, and they're all based on actual like autocomplete phrases that came up. What's the difference between jelly and jam? Between club soda and seltzer? Between a modem and a router? What's the difference between llamas and alpacas, mildew and mold, salamanders and newts? What's the difference between a passport and a visa? Brown eggs and white, stars and planets, me and you. I have another collection of demi-sonnets. This one was my second collection of demi-sonnets. It's called Assisted Living, and they're poems based on the caregiving experience. My late mother-in-law lived to be 99 years old, and my husband is an only child. So she was able to live independently right up until she passed away. She played Chopin for me on her baby grand Steinway 5 days before she died, which was amazing at age 99. But I have a series of poems about her life and also end of life and caregiving. I'm just going to share a couple of those with you. Waiting. The woman who chopped her hands like cymbals now finds herself waiting for everything. A sponge bath, a chirpy nurse to wipe her bum, a sun to blow in like weather. Tick, tick, till lunch, though she can't stand the food. Tick, 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 till dinner. Tick, tick, tick. Here, even the sweet potatoes are bitter. She was in a rehab center after she had broken her knee, and so several of the poems deal with that experience. And then I'll share this other one, Tasks for the Living, addressed to my husband. You attach the walker basket with the built-in cup holder, the one that lets her carry a glass of water to her favorite seat. Before you leave, you test the battery in her hearing aid, coax a curl with your finger dabbed in spit, and kiss her papery cheek. I thought those tied in a bit with the poems that Marjorie and Heidi read, which were really lovely. So we had some big news happen in my family this weekend. Our youngest daughter got engaged at Longwood Gardens, for any of you who know that. It was a big surprise to her. And so I thought I'd share this short poem that takes place many, many years ago, but is about my daughter. 18-year-old daughter as runaway horse. There are no goats and trees or bushes here, but the daughter is a horse. Her father searches the streets and alleys, imploring passers-by with photos on his phone. Those dark eyes, the glossy black coat. I stay behind, opening and closing the stall, recreating sounds I hope will draw her home. Tongue click of the latch, the hinge, that low moan. And I'm going to close with a poem that I've vowed to read at every reading because it's a pretty short poem. It's got 64 words, but it won a $5,000 prize. So I figured about $80 a word. You know, I should really get some mileage out of it. I also think that's really about what the going rate should be for poetry. I think we should all get about at least $80, maybe $100 a word. You know, would be about fair. This is called the Internet of Things. It's an economics term, and I explain it in the epigraph what it is. I have a colleague in physics who does a lot of scholarly work on the Internet of Things, and I became intrigued by it because it's one of those like funny phrases that like seems like it's saying a lot, but it actually says nothing. Like the Internet of Things, you know, it's like just all the things. So I wrote this poem, and the epigraph says, noun, the networking capability that allows information to be sent and received by objects and devices. So if you think about it, it's like how our devices talk to each other. The Internet of Things. The low tide riverbed silt of things. The cloud-swept distant hill of things. The open bedroom window in spring of things. The moonlit cricket symphony of things. The pitter-patter tin roof rain of things. The 50-year marriage loose skin of things. The clipped winter light of things. The stippled lymph node of things. The grief. Oh, the grief. The brief, ecstatic flight of things. Thank you so much for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erin. And two poems there out of Rattle. Rattle deserves lots of shout outs. Yeah, I try in certain respects to compete with Tim and Rattle, and there's only certain ways that can actually be done unless you have a very large fiscal backing. But a lot of the structural ideas have been an influence on me and One Art. Um, yeah, so some of the stylistic and tone concepts, maybe less than like the ideological. But in any case, Rattle is a wonderful journal, and I highly recommend it. And maybe one day we too can manage to put out chapbooks because I'm a big fan of the chapbook as well. $5,000 prizes. That's, a little bit ways off, but um, we'll work on that. Work in progress. Anyway, thank you again, Erin. Amazing reading. And now let's have our final official reader, since sadly Abby Murray is not with us uh, today. But so we do have Hayley Mitchell Haugen. Hayley, tell me, did I just say your last name wrong? I meant to ask before the reading.
Haugen.
Haugen. I know I need to confirm. Okay. Hayley Mitchell Haugen, who is a professor of English at Ohio University Southern. Light, and Shadow, Shadow and Light is a book of Hayley's. In fact, her first full-length poetry collection, which was out from Main Street Rag in 2018. She also has a chapbook, What the Grimm Girl Looks Forward to, which is from Finishing Line Press, and her latest chapbook, The Blue Wife Poems from Kelsay Books. Hayley, many of us will already know, is the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig, and Sheila-Na-Gig is both a literary magazine and press. Hayley was one of 6 of One Art's 2024 Pushcart Prize nominations, and I'll put a link in the chat. Thank you so much for being with us, Hayley.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark and Louisa, for all you do to support us. I'm really honored to be here with esteemed editors and poets, just, blushing in your presence. Just wonderful readings. And our esteemed audience, too. What a great turnout for our audience, too. So some of you, who know me are going to know some of these poems. So sorry for the repeats, but I've got some folks out there who haven't heard. So I'm just happy to be here. Thank you. The first one I'll read is from my Blue Wife Poems chapbook from Kelsay. And it's really become the signature poem for the book. So I thought I'd read at least one from there. And the titles are also the first lines. Blue wife in the kitchen only threw meat that one time when the burgers burnt so badly, their black edges crumbled as gritty as tile grout. The smoke alarm wailing, the toddler screeching, she smashed the blue Fiesta ware on the countertop, sent those over-grilled bastards rolling across the stove. Goddamn cooking, she cried, hurtling a charred disc past her husband's quiet shutter in the dining room. She crumpled then, amongst the weight of her ordinary domesticity, the meal planning, the grocery shopping, the cooking, the cleaning. I hate those women, she thought, the ones who make it look so easy, who adore their instant pots and tin recipes to their browser tabs, the ones who don't wilt a little every time a child asks, "What's for dinner?" Her woes spilled over like last week's chili as the sun sets beyond her kitchen curtains. She hoped her family might offer some comfort, a release from her anxiety, but she knew they looked on and saw only her foolishness, knew she would still have to feed them. So we write these books and we think we're done with them, right? And then poems keep coming, right, after they come out. And this summer I wrote a companion piece to Blue Wife in the Kitchen that I was surprised came out, but it did. And this one is simply The Kitchen. The kitchen begins in dark brown crosshatch wallpaper, stained with the grease of ages. The mother arrives from out of state to help peel off the layers, to give her daughter a fresh space to get ready for the remodel. $8,000, but they have to keep the soffit that won't be popular in 2 years. Keep the white tile flooring with the 1970s grout. They make room for the washer-dryer set from Big Sandy while lamenting the lack of cupboard space, a sense of foreboding for the hundreds of meals reluctantly cooked out of a duty to marriage and motherhood, the years of never quite getting it right. The kitchen, of course, is a metaphor for all her daughter's failures. The salad spinner melted on the hot stove top, the scorched wooden spoons, warped containers that should have never gone in the microwave, all that burnt meat. When her mother visits, she doesn't speak of the obvious. She describes the brightly lit houses she passed on the train, meeting teachers and poets across the communal table of the dining car. She cleans the kitchen before showering, before unpacking, but not before making her own cup of tea. As she scrubs the rings of crusted plastic off the stovetop, she knows she can't fix her daughter's unhappiness, but she can, for a moment, make that stainless steel shine. My mom was just here for 3 weeks, so that was cool. And then my kitchen is a mess again. So that just happened. Okay. I'm working almost done. I think I've got 2 poems left to go on a very tiny little A to Z chapbook. And all of the titles are just a single word that start with a letter of the alphabet. And Mark and Louisa have published 2 of those poems. But just to set up one of those, this first one appeared in Swim. I'm recently divorced, so no love poems from me. But here's some that are in that realm, I guess. Yeah. This is Yanked. Once the dogs rocketed off after something in the woods, taking me completely by surprise. I sailed through the air in my winter red wool, riding hood becomes Superwoman, landing with a moan on hard-packed snow. I laid there looking up through the underside of pines, taking in this new angle on life. Worried I'd cracked a rib, but embarrassed I'd peed a little. I wondered if a helpful neighbor would happen by. The cold and damp slowly seeping through my layers. The loyal dog eventually returned, nudged his concern into my ear with a wet nose. The bitch, however, couldn't care less and left me to my own devices. I stayed a while until the hitch hiked out of my breath, and I thought about my marriage, about how complacency can be both alluring and dangerous. And suddenly I knew which dog I needed to be. And this is the one that Mark so sweetly nominated for a pushcart, which I didn't get, but who does, right? Who gets those? Okay. This is called Reserved. I confess I am suspicious of this fresh happiness, worrying perhaps about depression sneaking back in, stealing what is shining, like I should know better than to flash all this new brightness around. When I retire for afternoon naps, more out of habit now than a place to lay my sadness, I can't nod off in all that light, my new sheer draperies singing the day. Might not my cheerfulness attract some evil eye? Might not disaster follow my good fortune? My neighbor quipped, I know you're not pregnant, but you're glowing. Soon after, he left his wife. I can't help feeling a little responsible. Now when friends ask, are you happy? I save some of that sunshine in reserve. I nod and smile, try to glow a little less. Say, yes, I'm good. I'm really doing okay now. And this is another one of my A to Z poems that One Art published. I enjoyed James Crew's edited collections of poems that are so positive and uplifting and healing. And I tried to write one of those, and I can't do it. It's just not me. But so this is one of those from one of his prompts that are in the book. This is my version, so maybe I come close, but not quite. This is called Generosity. There are some for whom chores are sacred. They accept each gift of laundry, weeks of dorm grime schlepped home in molding duffel bags, fold reverence into each fresh from the dryer's seam. They bake their own bread, meditate while it proves, or whip up 7 different kinds of salads, each family dinner a communion of leafy greens. A firmly tucked sheet, a gleaming guest tub, all acts of domestic devotion and enlightenment I've failed to achieve. I remain agnostic, scoff even at the notion of grace awaiting in the depths of the daily grind. When the gray mouse arrives during the cold snap, I am unmoved by any spirit of cleanliness to lay out sticky traps, cannot face that moment of anointing his little paws with vegetable oil to set him free. Instead, I listen to him scritch his way across countertops, crackle of cellophane, clink of spoons in an unwashed bowl. Sometimes I'll offer up a strawberry, a cheddar Triscuit, just a little something for comfort in the night. Soon after, Little Mouse brought all of his little friends, and I soon found myself calling Orkin. But I tried to be generous for a little while. I have one more I'll share with you. This is a new one from this summer. I don't usually write political poems, but this one came out and it appears in the current issue of Rise Up Review. It's after the oil painting Visit to the Witch by Edward Brutnall, 1882 in England. This is Visiting the Witch. There's only one reason to climb those craggy hills, your breasts uncomfortably straining against your tight Saturday errands dress, your hair tidy in a kerchief, no stray strands in that boiling black cauldron. The witch rests against her cave front, her dusty shawl scant protection from the wind, her sharp-edged moon of a face resting chin to chest, arms hugging kneecaps. Don't assume she doesn't sense your ascent. Her fire wafts purple steam, extracts the yellow stench you've come for, a satchel of coins secured by a gold chain around your hips, your waist thickening ever so slightly now. Your sister's arms across your shoulder, you think she may have made this trip before, and you too will etch this path for all our daughters, all our Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama girls, our free-loving 21st century girls who once thought they had choices, who choose now to visit the witch. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Hayley. Wonderful reading. I'm looking at the background that you have, and it keeps reminding me of, oh man, now I'm just blanking on the name of it. What is the Stephen King movie with the writer that...
Misery.
No, it's with Johnny Depp. It's like a... It's gonna come to me.
I should know that because I'm a Stephen King scholar, but
Oh, are you?
It's something with the window, something looking out the
It's
window.
Secret Window, yeah. So like I used to absolutely love that movie for whatever reason. It does get creepy at the end, which I don't like, but we'll have to talk about this whole scholar business with Stephen King because that's a whole different thing. That's very cool though, because yeah, okay, fun fact about Mark. Years back, I did a lot of reading aloud of Stephen King in the household, and I have personally read the entire Dark Tower series out loud. So there's a claim to fame. But yeah, the setup up there sort of looks like the office that Johnny Depp has in Secret Window. Anyway, that was very important information for everyone to know, obviously. It's just missing this like Doritos bag that was obviously put in the film as like product placement. So thank you everyone for your readings, and Louisa, if you would be so kind to do the honors of reading a poem by Abby E. Murray, since Abby couldn't be with us. But let me do just a short intro about Abby. I'll keep that brief. So Abby E. Murray, they, them, is editor of Collateral, a literary journal that concerns itself with the impact of violent conflict in military service beyond the combat zone, something I've wanted to ask Abby about for many years, about their involvement with the military. Abby's book, Hail and Farewell, won the Perugia Press Poetry Prize and was a finalist for the Washington State Book Award. Abby served for a period of time as poet laureate for the city of Tacoma in Washington State, and currently teaches rhetoric and military strategy at Army War College at the University of Washington. And Abby has received quite a number of accolades from One Art, including a Pushcart Prize nomination last year. So Louisa, are you up for reading a poem that we recently published by Abby in One Art?
Yes, I am. Thank you. All right. This is called It's Going to Be Okay. I know it will be okay because NASA has confirmed Stephen Hawking was right, and the world will end probably by the year 2600, which means we are celebrating the birth of our children into oblivion with instructions to make their own children in the path of oblivion, as if to hope someone's children at some point, and therefore all of us will live to be obliterated. But the children keep being born, keep entering the world as if it is a relief to finally be here, screaming from the terrible joy of it. And we all know children carry wisdom from a universe none of us can revisit or reclaim, or our pre-sight, pre-form, pre-human, pre-vengeance, and pre-world war selves may still exist as the perfectly contented and eternally miserable dust of stars. And the way back to that place is printed inside a pocket of the brain that's been sewn shut one fatal stitch at a time, one Earth day at a time, by a divine and quiet needle that does not ask our permission, which explains how we begin as children, but grow into grimness, then end up desperately needing to understand how okay we'll be. And I know we'll be okay because there was a double rainbow glowing against a heavy storm as it fattened and purpled over my city this morning, and all my friends took pictures before the power outages, and fallen trees were noted on living maps and grids. And now we have proof of the irreverence of light waves and in the indiscriminate appearance of hope to look at our dying screens tonight. And I know it will be okay because I overheard a crying man in the lobby of an animal hospital telling the shivering one-eyed dog beside him that it would be okay. He promised it would be okay. And when I asked what the dog's name was, the man said my name, said Abby. And isn't that ominous? Isn't it meaningful whether I like it or not? And isn't it true that it happened and my dog self was alive and visibly comforted by his words, shivering less, maybe awake more, loved more, even though dogs are dual citizens of this universe and the one we can't reach back to? Where wisdom is still just another type of common matter, which is to say, dogs, animals consistently know it is not okay, has never been okay, will not become okay, and yet if they gather with us in the path of disaster after disaster, purring or playing or burrowing happily into our warmth, because it is not survival to pursue anything otherwise. And I know it will be okay because I keep dreaming that my daughter and I are falling through the atmosphere toward the very real stone earth. And when she yells, "What's happening to us?" I take two equally crucial steps. First, I put my body between hers and oblivion. And second, I shout through the guiltless but roaring silence that it will be okay. Because even in my dreams, I'm learning that another answer would be death before impact, and I contain the residue of asteroids. I am part animal, and so are you. and so is my child, and we've been going on for millennia through the awful and sometimes okay without ever knowing how.
Thank you for that, Louisa. And that is a poem in one art by Abby E. Murray. That is spectacular. Um, and I see that Hayley has shared in the chat another poem by Abby in Sheila-Na-Gig, which was also nominated for a pushcart. Yeah, Abby's an incredible poet. So thank you to all of our readers. This has been amazing and a delight, and I'm very thankful that all of you were with us. I'm gonna stop the recording now.